I predict Justin Trudeau is going to have a tough re-election campaign.
People are really triggered by the bank freezing thing, and I agree. It's very sus, especially without a court order. But if the options are the military comes in at gunpoint and forces you to move, or they shoot you or arrest you, they pull you out of your truck via force, or the government says, well, we're going to freeze your bank accounts until you stop. Which one of these things do we want?
James Rockins has a great idea. He says you could just get rid of the mandates.
Trudeau vows to freeze anti-mandate protesters' bank accounts. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has taken the unprecedented step of invoking the Emergencies Act to crack down on anti-vaccine mandate protest. Mr. Trudeau said the scope of the measures would be time-limited, reasonable, and proportionate, and would not see the military deployed. With no need for court orders, banks can freeze personal accounts of anyone linked with the protest. Now, I don't understand how the law works in Canada land. How can they do this without a court order? Like the police, like who just like, does Justin Trudeau just decide to freeze your account? Do the police do this? How does this work? Who has the authority to do this?
Yeah, you would think there would be something like probable cause would exist in Canada, but maybe not.
Because, well, like in America, the government can freeze your bank, but I'm assuming a court there has to be a court order to do it. Like the police just can't say like, oh, we'll freeze like a bank account.
Well, I guess maybe probable cause. No, search warrants. Search warrants are deployed with probable cause, right? They have to have they have to state specifically what they're looking for, what they expect to find, that kind of stuff.
Right. And that's the whole reason you have the court is to oversight, to make sure the police, or at least pretend like the police are not, without their, acting without, outside their jurisdiction or their bounds or whatever.
Yes. So this is very suspect.
Very strange. Hundreds of demonstrators remain in Canada's capital city. On Sunday, law enforcement cleared an anti-mandate protesters at the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor, a critical pathway for Canada-U.S. trade after a week-long stalemate. What began as a rally against a new rule that all truckers must be vaccinated to cross the U.S.-Canadian border, quarantine upon return has grown into a border challenge to all COVID health restrictions. This is about keeping Canadians safe, protecting people's jobs, Mr. Trudeau told a news conference on Monday. He said the police would be given, quote, more tools to imprison or fine protesters and protect critical infrastructure. Mr. Trudeau told reporters the legislation would be applied temporarily and in a highly specific manner. Okay. So if it's legislation, they're saying they're passing a law that says they can do this.
Right.
Okay.
So just on the mandate thing, this is so strange to me because I'm living under the assumption that the pandemic is pretty much over now. So so forcing this legislation through and like sticking to your guns on this mandate seems completely insane to me, because if all they have to do to disband the truckers is abandon the idea of the mandate, what is preventing them from doing that?
Right. It is strange because even in the US, many cities and states, even blue states, are dropping or planning to drop both any sort of mandate they have, whether it's vaccine or mask mandates.
Right.
Which, I mean, that makes sense. All the studies I've seen say that the vaccines do not prevent you from getting or spreading Omicron at all.
Right.
So that kind of defeats the whole purpose of having the mandate in the first place. The mandate would only make sense if the vaccine actually prevented you from spreading it to another person. If it doesn't do that, the mandate has no logical or scientific basis whatsoever.
The mandate doesn't. Actually getting the vaccine does. I believe the studies are on the vaccine that the impact from COVID is far less. Now I know people will disagree with that, and that's fine.
Well,
you're allowed to disagree.
Right. Yeah. But that's a different issue. Like
it is a different issue.
Yeah, because you can get the vaccine for yourself to say, I want to have, if I get COVID, I'll have less symptoms, or my symptoms will be not as severe. But the mandate would only make sense if you're protecting, if you're saying, oh, you have to get vaccinated because you being unvaccinated harms other people.
Right. And this is the reason why I wanted to bring it up, because they've pumped this completely false narrative on the left so fucking hard that I can't help but think this is completely political. This is Justin Trudeau completely pandering to his voters. This whole idea of keeping Canadians safe is what he's really after. And even though neither of us really believes, I mean, the safety factor is so minuscule at this point, in my opinion. I mean, I'm assuming you agree with me.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That
I think.
Go ahead.
Well, I think it's not so much like they have to maintain the narrative. It's more an ego, like we can't back down. You know, we have the power here. If we back down, we'll look weak, and then people will do this and question our authority going forward in the future.
When have Democrats ever worried about appearing weak, though?
Well, we're not talking about Democrats. We're talking about Canada.
Well, Justin
whatever
Trudeau
their left party is.
Justin Trudeau is the equivalent of the Democrats, but
I guess I don't know. It's just it is strange. It'd be hilarious, and I wouldn't be surprised if this happens. Like a week or two after all this trucker stuff goes away, and they either arrest or freeze all these people's bank accounts, then they're gonna lift the mandate, and everyone's gonna be like, "What the fuck?"
I know. This is why it's so insane. It's so insane that this is even happening.
They're like, "What was the point? What was the point of this?" Anyway, let me finish.
Continuing, yeah. Critics have noted.
Yes. Critics have noted that the Prime Minister voiced support for farmers in India who blocked major highways to New Delhi for a year in 2021, saying at the time, Canada will always be there to defend the right of peaceful protest.
So they're hypocrites as well. Hilarious.
What? I wish they said what was being protested at that time.
I'm not sure.
Good job, article. Mr. Trudeau invoking of the Emergencies Act came as demonstrations across Canada entered their third week. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland said at Monday's news conference that banks would be able to freeze personal accounts of anyone linked with a protest without any need for a court order.
That's crazy. That's insane.
That's pretty crazy, yeah.
Can you imagine? Like if you sent some donation to them, potentially they could freeze your bank account? I mean, you're linked with the protest. I sent them a donation, right?
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, we should look up the law to see. Do you have to actually be personally there blockading traffic, or is you just giving money enough?
You're supporting the terrorists. That's the way they're categorizing everything. It's totally insane.
Right. Vehicle insurance of anyone involved with demonstrations can also be suspended, she added. Ms. Freeland said they are broadening Canada's terrorist financing rules to cover cryptocurrencies and crowdfunding platforms as part of the effort. It's all about following the money, she said. She spoke after hackers released details of what they said were 93,000 donations for the truckers totaling $8.4 million to the crowdfunding platform Give, Send, Go.
Wow.
Hackers, huh? That's hackers, finger quotes.
Hackers outed the... Oh, you think it just might be the CIA or something?
Not the CIA, but like Canada. I don't know. Like, well,
it's so.
I mean,
weird.
Maybe there are woke hackers. Maybe there are pro-vaccine.
There totally
hackers
are.
Running, I guess
There totally are. What are you talking about? There's hackers on both sides, but they're outing personal information of people who donated.
It's so weird because could you imagine in the 90s or the early 2000s hackers siding with the government and outing anti-government protests?
It's crazy. Anonymous has become fully, a product of the Fed, the CIA.
That's so strange.
The FBI.
Yes. The Emergencies Act passed in 1988 requires a high legal bar to be invoked. It may only be used in urgent and critical situations that seriously endanger the lives, health, or safety of Canadians. Lawful protests do not qualify. Mm-hmm. Speaking on Monday, Canada Justice Minister David Lametti argued these conditions have been met. But the Canadian Civil Liberties Association disagreed, warning that the move threatens our democracy and our civil liberties.
Lawful protests do not qualify.
Right.
Lawful protests. I like that, how they just make with this protest is obviously unlawful because we don't like it.
Well, to be fair, let's be fair here.
Uh-oh. Come on.
If people,
Have you seen Tim Pool's video views?
I have seen Tim Pool's.
Let's not be fair. No, I'm sorry.
No, okay. This is Tim
throw
Pool.
Tim Pool under the bus.
The Tim Pool impression would be he'll make his outlandish claim and then he'll immediately say, "But I don't know."
Yeah.
But then he'll say it again.
Complicated.
What's complicated? Listen, I'm not saying lizards control the government. I mean, it's a high likelihood that they are, but I don't know.
It's complicated.
Maybe they don't. No, but it's not just people protesting. It's they're blockading traffic, right? And they're preventing any traffic from entering, or they were entering that city through that bridge.
Right.
So it's a little different. I assume we'd all be very triggered if Black Lives Matter basically, like imagine if Black Lives Matter
took over a bridge, which they did.
The main bridge that connected New York to like New Jersey or something.
They did. The George Floyd protests, they were going out on the freeway and blocking traffic.
Right. But no, I'm saying,
everyone
but
was like,
if that
fuck this.
Imagine if that went on for a week or something.
Yeah.
For a week, no one could enter New York from New Jersey or vice versa.
Right.
That'd be pretty crazy. Ottawa protest leader Tamara Litch, unfortunate name, dismissed Mr. Trudeau's move, telling AP News, "There are no threats that will frighten us. We will hold the line." Ontario Premier Doug Ford, a conservative, said he supported the federal government. But the premiers of Quebec, Manitoba, Alberta, and Saskatchewan said that the emergency powers were not needed in their regions. Before Mr. Trudeau's announcement, Quebec Premier François Legault said invoking the Emergencies Act could throw oil on the fire. Will Trudeau succeed under growing pressures to bring the disruptive protests to an end, be it from the White House or increasingly frustrated Canadians? Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's entered uncharted territories with the decision to invoke never before used act. This is just the same story again.
Yeah, we don't have to read it. You gotta.
Okay.
So we were talking before the stream began about the protest, and you seem like
I'm in favor of people protesting. I'm against the mandates. I think Canada still going forward with the mandates is preposterous and ridiculous, considering what we know now. However, I'm not in favor of blocking traffic and blocking access to cities for a week on end or longer. As I said, imagine if Black Lives Matter was blocking the main bridge from New York to New Jersey.
It's a completely different situation, though.
How is it different?
Well, first of all, the Black Lives Matter would be blocking the bridge because of police brutality and racial injustice, and you could just march out the actual statistics on police misconduct, and they're extremely low. So I mean, they're protesting something that there's a compelling argument that there's really nothing here to protest. These people are protesting a real tangible subject. I mean, they don't want to get vaccinated.
Right.
There doesn't seem to be any reason to get vaccinated with the pandemic winding down here. It really does seem like just a power play. You and I both seem to agree on that. And forcing someone to get vaccinated in some political power play is detestable, completely detestable. So I'm questioning, block fucking traffic.
I mean, that's a persuasive argument. It's a good argument. Because basically, so what we're saying is we're not necessarily, or you're saying, we're not necessarily opposed to the idea of blocking traffic into a city for weeks on end, as long as the cause is righteous.
It's justified. Yeah, of course.
Justified.
Yeah.
And the issue is that with Black Lives Matter, we don't think the cause is justified because the police brutality crime statistics are way overblown and not true.
And they, I mean, I can see the other side of the argument. Like Justin Trudeau will say, "Oh, it's just a little vaccine, okay? It's totally safe," right? I mean, they're going to say the same exact. They're going to have the same exact counter argument that we have to Black Lives Matter.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Wouldn't that be the counter argument? Because you're right that yes, the vaccine mandate is real and that people have to get the vaccine, but the fear of getting the vaccine, would that not also be as overblown as people afraid of police brutality or the killing of unarmed Black men?
Well, the difference is the fear in the Black Lives Matter situation is fear that's never going to be realized. The fear in the vaccine
Well, it's
mandate
realized for some people.
it
right?
is.
I mean, some
but
people
for the
do
vax
experience that.
mandate,
It's just very low.
but for the vax mandate people, the fear is realized in everyone because you are going to have to get the vaccine.
No, it's people will get.
You think
people
the people
presumably have to
protest,
get
right?
No, people presumably have to get vaccinated, but I mean the fear. No one's like, oh, well, that's not true. Not no one, but most people aren't like, oh, I'm against the vaccine because I don't like needles. They're against the vaccine because they're afraid that getting the vaccine will cause some negative health effect.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but that's what I'm saying. If that turns out not to be true, if that fear is not realized, wouldn't that be the same thing as the counter argument to the Black Lives Matter?
Well,
fear not being realized.
I've said many times, I think the fear is not necessarily going to go away after you get the vaccination. A lot of the people have fear of the long-term consequences, which, I mean, you could be losing sleep every night over that.
So, yeah, but that's just that.
It's, I guess it is, like, it is the same as the police brutality.
Yeah, because that'd be like saying, well, if a black person is losing sleep over fear that the police are going to bust in and shoot them because of fake news.
So it's complicated.
It's fucking. No, I guess
it's
the
complicated.
Right now, the counter argument would be, well, maybe it's not that some people, not necessarily that they're afraid of getting vaccinated having a negative health outcome. They just don't like the idea that the government has some autonomy over their person.
Yeah, which I agree with. But that it's the same argument in the Black Lives Matter case because the police they're upset that the police have autonomy over them.
Right.
That they can stop them and frisk them and all.
Right.
I mean, we are drifting into very similar territory here.
Right. That's why I find this
never would have suspected.
So I find it such an interesting story is that it is somewhat similar, not exactly similar, but it's somewhat similar to a lot of the BLM protests. So actually, I don't know. I don't know what side I come on this story. I'm undecided. You sort of convinced me a little bit to be more on the side of blocking traffic, but I'm still kind of iffy on it. I don't know.
It is interesting how much of politics is not arguing philosophy or ideology, but arguing what the facts are of the world. And then the proper response to those facts is always different because the facts dictate the response. So, if we can make a compelling case that the vaccine mandates, they have a real gripe with the government, and the Black Lives Matter people don't have a real gripe with the government, then the course of action becomes clear. What are you laughing at? Someone in the chat?
CT is like, I will 100% argue with Sitch about that.
Yeah, because CT is Canadian, so shall we move on to the next story? Or
there's two things I want to do before we move on. Okay. JMac for $100. Thanks so much, Jay. Says, I'm 100% behind civil disobedience, but you have to be prepared for the punishment. That's really what pushes society to change. I think back to civil rights sit-ins. They were illegal and people were arrested, but we all can see that the law was in the wrong. Yeah, it's a good point. Very good point. I remember I had a teacher actually in 7th grade. I don't remember what the fuck that was about, but I remember a teacher in 7th grade who had made that same point. He was very mad because there's some protest down where I lived where people were blocking traffic for some cause. And then when the police came, they ran away. And he's like, no, you sit there and you get arrested.
Exactly.
That's part of the protest. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. The only thing I want to talk about the story, which is hilarious, is that Scott Adams was asked about this and he didn't say much. And I'm wondering if he didn't say much because he actually has advocated for this tactic in the past. He said, when the police want to arrest someone, instead of like going to their house and trying to arrest them by force and possibly killing them, wouldn't it just be a better, safer idea to basically cut off all their access to money and the internet and force them to come to you?
What a fucker.
Well,
that's why.
Here's my question to you and the chat. Okay.
This is why I hate Scott Adams, by the way.
Here's my question to you.
Artist.
This was not in relation. Now, by the way, this was a while ago. This was not in relation to
the trucker thing.
The trucker thing at all. This was in relation to during Black Lives Matter when, the police would shoot black people, supposedly, he
Mm-hmm.
was like, why don't the police, instead of doing this, just force you to kind of come to them to be
Mm-hmm.
arrested? And so that's my question, is that people are really triggered by the bank freezing thing. And I agree. It's very sus, especially without a court order. But if the options are the military comes in at gunpoint and forces you to move, or they shoot you or arrest you, they pull you out of your truck via force, or the government says, well, we're going to freeze your bank accounts until you stop. Which one of these things do we want?
Well, first of all, the freezing of the bank accounts is only going to affect people who have bank accounts and who are, have jobs and are part of the economy. So there's going to be this situation where a false positive is really going to ruin someone's day. But you're going to freeze a bank account of a serial killer or someone who's a drug dealer, someone who actually, they're just going to go on the lam. They're going to run from the law. They're not going to come to you.
But obviously we're not. This wouldn't be for every situation.
Practicality dictates that it's just ridiculous.
For the sake of the conversation, hypothetically, let's assume that there'll be no incorrect false positives, because obviously that's a difference. I mean, obviously the police can false positive arrest
100% of the people you freeze the accounts of are going to go on the run. Like,
no, what? Okay, but I'm saying we'll talk about the Canadian truck protests specifically.
Okay.
Let me play devil's advocate here. Is it better to have the military? We'll assume that the government capitulating is off the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which obviously I would prefer. That would be the outcome I would prefer. But assuming that's not going to happen, which is not, what's the better scenario? The military comes in and drags truckers out of their trucks at gunpoint and then moves the trucks, or the government says, we're freezing your bank accounts if you're driving the truck, not if you're donating. If you're in the truck, if you're blocking traffic, we're going to freeze your bank account until you move your truck.
Which one's better for who?
Well, I'm saying, which would you prefer?
I mean, obviously, this is insane. I can't. They're two terrible options.
But you have to. That's like
drowning.
That's reality, Adam. Sometimes you have to choose between two bad options.
Do you want to be drowned or do you want to be lit on fire? Let me think. Which do I
think
want?
drowning would be better than burning to death, honestly. But
I mean, neither.
Okay.
Don't do either one.
Weaseling out. Though,
well,
to be fair, I think I am creating a hypothetical that doesn't exist, because I'm just curious about this.
The people need to be arrested. I'm not for freezing the bank accounts
so you're in favor of
their money. Like, the first thing, you freeze their bank accounts and then they're arrested and their bank accounts are frozen. It's like, how are they going to hire an attorney?
Well, no. The bank accounts would presumably be unfrozen once they're in custody.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry, your bank account wasn't unfrozen.
Well, okay.
Now you're in jail with no money.
I'm more curious about whether you think this is a good idea, like a technique to get someone arrested.
No, I think it's a terrible idea.
You think it's not going to work? Okay.
I'm against that, and I'm also against military style dragging people out of the truck. So
yeah, but you have to choose one of those choices.
Is it military style? I mean,
well, that's what they did. Isn't that what they did with the truckers? The police or the military came in and forced them to move.
Dragged them out of their trucks
if they didn't move.
I predict Justin Trudeau is going to have a tough re-election campaign.
Right. Yeah. Now, to be fair, I don't think that the scenario I gave you, I don't think that's what's happening in Canada, because they did move or force the truckers to move by force.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what makes it I think that's why people are so reactive when they talk about freezing the bank accounts. Because it's like, well, wait a minute, whose bank accounts exactly are you freezing?
Yes, totally.
For what purpose? Yada, yada, yada. So
yeah. We froze the wrong bank account.
Right. I'm more just curious if that's a possible idea for, getting criminals arrested.
James Rockins has a great idea. He says you could just get rid of the mandates.
Of course. But as I said, that would be my preferred option. But assuming that's not going to happen.
It's stupid. It's so stupid that they're even doing it. It's so stupid. The pandemic is over.
But that's a different conversation.
Look at all of them with their masks and whatnot. Look at this picture. These fucking crazy people here.
Well, okay, anyway, we can move on. Maniac. I just thought it was funny that I was waiting for Scott Adams to address this, because this was literally his suggestion for dealing with crime, and he didn't He didn't talk about it. So
I'm one step
probably
away
because he
from,
knew his audience would become very triggered if he talked about it.
I'm one step away of forbidding you from ever watching Scott Adams again.
Okay.
Okay, final thoughts.
Wow.
Anything? Are we moving on?
No, we're moving on.
Okay. Bye, Trudeau.
It's complicated. That's the final thought. All
Bye,
right.
Trudeau. Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.